What if the ruthless CEO who destroyed a loyal worker's life was about to face a shattering truth from his own hidden past? In a tense Cleveland courtroom, Victor Harlan, the iron-fisted tycoon, sneered at Eleanor Thompson, the 58-year-old assembly line veteran he'd callously fired for daring to speak up about deadly factory conditions. As her young lawyer, Alex, pressed him on the stand, Victor dismissed her as replaceable. But then came the bombshell. You abandoned her 35 years ago, pregnant and alone. That child is me, your son. Gasps echoed through the room, Victor's empire crumbling in an instant. How did a simple wrongful termination spiral into this explosive family reckoning? And what long-buried secret would force a heartless mogul to confront his sins? Stick around to uncover the full story of betrayal, justice, and redemption in America's Rust Belt. If this grips you, smash that subscribe button, turn on notifications for more inspiring tales, and comment below. Where are you watching from? You might find neighbors tuning in too. The first light of dawn crept through the thin curtains of Eleanor's small bedroom, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floor. She stirred under the faded quilt, her joints protesting with a sharp ache as she swung her legs over the side of the bed. At 58, Eleanor Thompson had learned to ignore the pain, or at least push it down deep where it wouldn't slow her. She glanced at the alarm clock, 5:15 a.m., and sighed softly. Another day. In the kitchen, the coffee pot gurgled to life, its familiar hum the only sound in the quiet house. The place was tiny, a two-bedroom bungalow on the outskirts of Cleveland, Ohio, squeezed between similar homes in a neighborhood that had seen better days. Paint peeled from the walls in places, and the linoleum floor curled at the edges. Eleanor poured her coffee black, no sugar to spare, and sat at the Formica table cluttered with envelopes, medical bills mostly. The latest one from the rheumatologist stared up at her. $450 due last week. She rubbed her swollen knuckles, the arthritis a constant companion after 3 decades on the assembly line. Why fight it? She muttered to herself, tracing the edge of the bill with a calloused finger. But she knew why. The job at Harlan Automotive Manufacturing was all she had. 30 years tightening bolts, welding frames, breathing in the metallic tang of oil and exhaust. The factory loomed on the edge of town, a hulking relic of the Rust Belt's glory days, now sputtering under corporate cutbacks. Eleanor had started there young, full of hope, back when Cleveland's mills and plants promised steady work and a future. Now, at her age, starting over wasn't an option. She stood, wincing as her knees cracked, and shuffled to the sink to rinse her mug. The house felt empty, echoing with memories. In the living room, a single framed photo sat on the mantel, a younger Eleanor, smiling with a bundle in her arms, her son, the one she'd given up for adoption at 23, when poverty and abandonment left her no choice. You deserved better, she whispered to the photo, her voice catching. The father, an ambitious young man named Victor, had vanished as soon as she told him about the pregnancy. No calls, no support. Just gone, chasing his dreams while she scraped by. Eleanor shook off the thought. No time for regrets. She grabbed her lunch, a peanut butter sandwich and an apple, from the fridge and headed out. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of Lake Erie's industrial haze. Her old pickup truck rumbled to life after a few tries, the engine coughing like an old smoker. The drive to the factory took 20 minutes, past boarded-up storefronts and overgrown lots where factories once stood. Cleveland had changed. The steel mills that built the city were ghosts now, victims of globalization and greed. We're the last holdouts, Eleanor thought, gripping the wheel tighter. Her co-workers were like family, middle-aged folks with kids in college or grandkids to spoil, all clinging to the promise of a pension that seemed more myth than reality. At the plant, she parked in the employee lot, dodging potholes filled with yesterday's rain. The massive building loomed, its brick facade cracked and faded. Harlan Automotive, named after the CEO himself, churned out parts for cars that would never see these streets. Eleanor clocked in at the time clock, the beep echoing in the locker room. She donned her steel-toed boots, gloves, and safety glasses, the gear heavy on her frame. "Morning, Ellie," called out Maria, a fellow line worker in her 50s, tying back her graying hair. "Ready for another grind?" "Always," Eleanor replied with a forced smile, though her hands throbbed already. They walked to the assembly floor together, the roar of machines drowning out conversation. Conveyor belts whirred, sparks flew from welders, and the air thickened with the smell of hot metal. Eleanor's station was midway down the line, bolting chassis frames. She picked up her wrench, the tool an extension of her arm after all these years. Twist, tighten, repeat. Her mind wandered as she worked. Bills, doctor's appointments, the nagging fear of what came next. "Just keep going," she told herself, sweat beading on her forehead. A younger worker nearby struggled with a jammed machine, cursing under his breath. Eleanor helped him without a word, her experience guiding his hands. Lunch break came at noon, a brief respite in the break room. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as she unwrapped her sandwich. Conversations swirled around her, complaints about overtime cuts, rumors of more layoffs. "Heard the big boss in Detroit wants to ship jobs south of the border," one man grumbled. Eleanor nodded silently, her stomach twisting. Victor Harlan, the name on the company logo, was a faceless villain to most, but to her, a ghost from the past. She pushed the thought away, focusing on the apple's crisp bite. Back on the line, the afternoon dragged. A machine nearby rattled ominously, its belts frayed. Eleanor eyed it warily. Last month, it malfunctioned, sending a coworker to the ER with burns. "They'll fix it when someone dies," she thought bitterly. By shift's end at 4 p.m., her body screamed for rest. She clocked out, waving goodbye to Maria, and drove home through rush-hour traffic. The sun dipped low, painting the skyline in oranges and grays. At home, Eleanor collapsed into her armchair, kicking off her boots. The house was silent, save for the tick of the wall clock. She picked up the photo again, her eyes softening. "I wonder where you are now," she whispered to her lost son. The adoption agency had promised a good life, maybe in a big city, with opportunities she couldn't provide. It was the right choice, she told herself, but the ache never faded. Dinner was simple. Canned soup heated on the stove. As she ate alone at the table, the bills mocked her from the stack. One day at a time, she resolved, though doubt crept in. In this fading corner of America, where dreams rusted like old steel, Eleanor Thompson held on, stubborn, unseen, but unbreakable. That night, as rain pattered against the window, she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling cracks. Sleep came fitfully, dreams mixing factory noise with a baby's cry. Tomorrow will be the same. Or so she thought. Little did she know, the wheels of change were already turning, far away in a New York office, where a young lawyer scrolled through headlines about labor woes in the heartland. But for now, in her quiet world, Eleanor drifted off, her resilient spirit flickering like a candle in the wind. The Detroit skyline glittered under the morning sun, a sprawl of glass towers piercing the crisp Michigan air. High up in one of them, on the 45th floor of Harlan Tower, Victor Harlan leaned back in his leather executive chair, swirling a crystal glass of single malt scotch despite the early hour. At 62, his face was a map of sharp lines, deep creases from years of boardroom battles, silver hair cropped short like a general's, and eyes that glinted with the cold precision of a calculator. He stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows, not at the view of the Detroit River below, but at the digital stock ticker scrolling across his desk screen. Shares up 2.3%. Not enough. Never enough. Progress demands sacrifice, he murmured to himself, the words a mantra etched into his mind since business school. Victor set the glass down with a deliberate clink, his manicured fingers drumming the mahogany desk. The office was a fortress of opulence, walls lined with framed awards from Forbes and the Chamber of Commerce, a Persian rug underfoot that cost more than most people's annual salary, and a private bar stocked with vintages he'd never share. No family photos here, no distractions. Family was a liability in his world, a lesson learned young. His assistant buzzed the intercom. "Mr. Harlan, the board is ready in conference room A." Victor stood, straightening his tailored Italian suit, charcoal gray, no tie, because ties were for subordinates. He grabbed his tablet and strode down the hallway, heels clicking on polished marble. The corridor walls displayed company milestones. Harlan Automotive's rise from a small parts supplier to a global powerhouse. Victor had built it all, brick by acquisition, cutting corners where others saw people. Efficiency, he thought, a faint smile curling his lip. That's what separated winners from the herd. The conference room hummed with low voices as he entered. 10 executives sat around the oval table, laptops open, faces expectant. Victor took his seat at the head, nodding curtly. "Let's get to it. Quarterly projections." Charts flashed on the wall screen, red lines dipping for labor costs, green spiking for profits. The CFO, a wiry man in his 50s, cleared his throat. "Sir, the Cleveland plant is underperforming. Maintenance on those old lines is eating into margins. We recommend accelerating the shift to Mexico. Lower wages, fewer regulations." Victor leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "How many jobs?" "About 500 in Cleveland alone," the CFO replied, avoiding eye contact. "We can phase it out over 6 months, offer minimal severance to the long-timers." A murmur rippled through the room. Victor silenced it with a raised hand. "Minimal? Make it none for the complainers. We've got reports from the floor. Some assembly workers griping about safety. That kind of noise disrupts operations." He tapped the tablet, pulling up an email from the plant manager. "This one, Thompson, filed a complaint last week. Handle it quietly. We don't need union stirring." One executive shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, the Rust Belt plants are icons. Layoffs could spark bad press." Victor's laugh was short, bark-like. "Press? We own the narrative. Spin it as modernization, saving American jobs by staying competitive." Inside, a flicker of something old stirred, but he quashed it. Sentiment was for the weak. He remembered Ohio dimly, a scrappy start in his 20s, working sales for an auto supplier. There was a girl back then, Eleanor, sweet but naive, talking about settling down. When she got pregnant, he saw the trap. Can't build an empire with anchors, he'd told himself, packing his bags for Detroit without a backward glance. No regrets. She'd managed or not. It didn't matter. The meeting dragged on, numbers blurring into strategy. Victor dominated, his voice a blade slicing through objections. "Cut the fat. Move production south. Those Cleveland relics are bleeding us. Outdated machines, entitled workers demanding fixes we can't afford." He stood, signaling the end. "Implement by the end of the quarter. Dismissed." As the room emptied, Victor lingered, staring at the screen's glowing graphs. A twinge in his chest. Indigestion from the coffee, probably. Or was it that nagging whisper from the past? He shook it off, heading to his private elevator. Down in the lobby, a chauffeur waited with his black Mercedes, engine purring. Victor slid into the back seat, phone already in hand, barking orders to his VP. "Double-check Cleveland. Squash any complaints before they escalate. The car glided through Detroit's streets, past gleaming casinos and derelict warehouses, a city of contrasts, much like his life. Victor scrolled emails, one catching his eye. A safety audit from the Ohio plant, flagged red for hazards. He deleted it. Not my problem, he thought. Problems were for underlings. His mind wandered briefly to that old flame, Eleanor. What became of her? Probably faded into obscurity, like so many in those dying towns. Good riddance. Attachments were weaknesses. Lunch was at an exclusive club downtown, schmoozing with investors over steak and wine. Victor charmed them effortlessly, tales of expansion laced with promises of returns. "We're leaner than ever," he boasted, clinking glasses. Laughter echoed, but inside a hollow echo lingered. Success tasted sweet, yet something gnawed, an emptiness he filled with more deals, more power. The afternoon brought a press call. Victor stood before cameras in the company atrium, tie now on for optics. "Harlan Automotive is committed to innovation," he declared, voice booming. "We're investing in the future, creating jobs where it counts." Questions about labor issues? He deflected smoothly. "Isolated incidents. Our workers are valued assets." Assets, not people. The word felt right. Back in his office, sunset painting the room gold, Victor poured another scotch. He reviewed the relocation plan, marking plants for closure. Cleveland topped the list. "They'll adapt," he told himself, ignoring the faint unease. In his world, adaptation meant survival of the fittest. He was the fittest. That night, in his sprawling penthouse overlooking the city lights, Victor unwound with a cigar on the balcony. The wind carried distant traffic hum, a symphony of progress. He thought of his son, adopted out, or so the agency said. No, not his. He'd paid to erase that chapter. "Better off without me," he rationalized, puffing smoke into the dark. Sleep came easy, dreams of rising stocks and empty factories. But in the quiet hours, as the city slept, Victor's empire hummed with unseen fractures. Whispers from Ohio plants reached Detroit. Workers like Eleanor, simmering with resentment. The stage was set, conflicts brewing in boardrooms and break rooms alike. Victor Harlan, king of his domain, remained oblivious, his throne built on sand shifting beneath him. For now. The factory floor pulsed with the relentless rhythm of machines, conveyor belts grinding forward like an unending march. Eleanor wiped sweat from her brow with the back of her glove, her wrench slipping slightly on the bolt she was tightening. The air hung heavy with the acrid scent of oil and heated metal, and the fluorescent lights overhead buzzed like angry hornets. It was midday, the line in full swing, when the incident happened. A sharp screech pierced the din. Down the line, a chassis frame jammed in the press machine, its ancient gears groaning under the strain. Sparks flew as the metal twisted unnaturally. "Watch out!" someone yelled. Eleanor spun around just in time to see her co-worker, Jim, a burly man in his 50s with a salt and pepper beard, yank his hand back, but not fast enough. The edge of the frame clipped his arm, tearing through his sleeve and drawing blood. Jim staggered back, clutching the wound, his face paling as red seeped through his fingers. Chaos erupted. Workers rushed over, one grabbing a first aid kit from the wall. Eleanor knelt beside Jim, pressing a clean rag to the gash. "Hold still," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her. Jim grimaced, sweat beading on his forehead. "Damn thing's been acting up for weeks," he muttered through gritted teeth. "Told the foreman twice." Eleanor's jaw tightened. She glanced at the machine. A relic from the 80s, its warning labels faded, belts frayed like old ropes. This wasn't the first time. Last month, Maria burned her hand on a faulty welder. Before that, a loose chain had nearly taken out someone's eye. Enough, Eleanor thought, a fire igniting in her chest. She'd stayed silent too long, swallowing complaints like bitter pills. But seeing Jim's blood on the floor, the fear in his eyes, it snapped something inside her. As the shift supervisor, a lanky man named Rick, with a clipboard perpetually in hand, ambled over, Eleanor stood. "This has to stop," she said, her voice rising above the slowing machines. Workers paused, tools hovering midair, eyes flicking toward her. Rick frowned, adjusting his hard hat. "What now, Thompson?" "The equipment's falling apart," Eleanor pressed, gesturing to the press. "Jim could have lost his arm. We've reported this junk before. Belts, gears, all of it. When are you fixing it?" Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the pent-up frustration of years. Around her, murmurs rippled through the line. Maria nodded subtly. Another worker crossed his arms in silent agreement. It was public now, out in the open. No turning back. Rick's face hardened, his lips thinning into a line. "File a report if you want. But get back to work. We're behind quota." He turned away, but Eleanor stepped forward. "A report? That's what we did last time." "Nothing changes. People are getting hurt, Rick. Real people." Her voice echoed off the high ceilings, drawing more stares. Jim, still on the floor, looked up at her with a mix of gratitude and worry. The supervisor paused, then pulled out his radio. "Yeah, we've got a complaint here. Send it up." He shot Eleanor a warning glance. "You're walking a thin line, Ellie." Back at her station, Eleanor tried to focus, but her mind raced. "What have I done?" she wondered, twisting another bolt with more force than needed. Whispers spread like sparks, some supportive, others cautious. "Good for you." Maria leaned in during a brief lull. Someone had to say it. But Eleanor felt the weight of eyes on her, the unspoken fear that speaking up meant painting a target on your back. In Detroit, Victor's phone buzzed during a lunchtime meeting. He glanced at the screen, an urgent email from the Cleveland plant manager. "Safety complaint on the floor. A worker named Thompson stirring trouble. Public outburst." Victor's fork paused midair, a piece of rare steak dangling. Thompson. The name tugged at a dusty corner of his memory, but he brushed it aside. "Handle it," he typed back swiftly. "No disruptions. Terminate if necessary." He set the phone down, resuming his conversation with investors. "As I was saying, efficiency is key." Inside, a faint annoyance flickered. Troublemakers were pests. Squash them quickly. By afternoon, the factory air thickened with tension. Eleanor noticed supervisors hovering more, radios crackling. At shift's end, as she headed to the locker room, Rick intercepted her in the hallway. "Office. Now." Her stomach dropped, but she held her head high, following him into the small, stuffy room lined with filing cabinets and faded motivational posters. The plant manager, a stout man named Harlan, no relation, or so he claimed, sat behind the desk, arms crossed. "Thompson, we've reviewed your complaint." His tone was flat, eyes avoiding hers. "But your outburst disrupted operations. Insubordination." Eleanor's heart pounded. "Disrupted? Jim's bleeding out there because of your negligence?" The manager leaned forward, voice low. "Corporate orders. You're fired. Effective immediately. Clean out your locker. No severance. Policy for cause." The words hit like a punch. Fired. After 30 years. Eleanor's face flushed, her fists clenching at her sides. "You can't. This is wrong." But the manager stood, opening the door. "Escort her out," he called to security. In the locker room, under the watchful eyes of a guard, Eleanor stuffed her belongings into a cardboard box. Gloves, a spare uniform, and a photo of her old crew. Co-workers lingered nearby, expressions a mix of sympathy and fear. "Ellie?" Maria started, but trailed off, glancing at the guard. Eleanor forced a nod. "It's okay. I'll be fine." But inside, panic swirled. No job meant no paycheck. The bills? The mortgage? How would she eat? As she walked out the factory doors for the last time, box under her arm, the parking lot stretched empty under the gray sky. Workers streamed past, averting gazes, the public humiliation complete. One or two whispered, "Sorry," but most hurried on, heads down. Eleanor climbed into her truck, slamming the door. Tears blurred her vision as she gripped the wheel. What now? She thought, the engine rumbling to life. The factory shrank in her rearview mirror, a symbol of betrayal. At home, she dropped the box on the kitchen table, the thud echoing in the silence. The eviction notice from last month mocked her from the counter. Without income, she'd lose the house in weeks. She sank into a chair, rubbing her aching hands. "I spoke up for what's right," she told herself, but doubt crept in. Was it worth it? The phone rang. A bill collector. She let it go to voicemail. That night, rain lashed the windows as Eleanor lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The injustice burned. A loyal worker discarded like scrap metal. "They think we're replaceable," she whispered into the dark. But deep down, a spark of defiance flickered. This wasn't the end. Not yet. For now, though, the weight of it all pressed down, heavy as the machines she'd left behind. The days blurred into a haze of rejection and silence for Eleanor. She sat at the rickety table in her dimly lit kitchen, the eviction notice crumpled in her fist. Sunlight filtered through grimy windows, casting harsh shadows on the stack of job applications she'd filled out. Gas stations, diners, warehouses, all unanswered. Her reflection in the cold coffee mug stared back, eyes sunken, lines deeper around her mouth. 30 years, and this is it? She whispered, her voice cracking in the empty room. She unfolded the notice again, the bold red letters screaming final warning. The mortgage was 3 months behind now, no paycheck to bridge the gap. Eleanor pushed back from the table, her chair scraping the linoleum like an accusation. She paced the small space, hands rubbing her aching wrists. The arthritis flared hotter without the routine of work to distract her. I should have kept quiet, the thought gnawed at her, but she shook it off. No. Speaking up was right. Jim's injury, the machines, they could have killed someone. Desperation propelled her to the local library, the air thick with the scent of old books and quiet desperation. She hunched over a public computer, fingers pecking at the keys. Wrongful termination lawsuit Ohio, she typed, scrolling through legal aid sites, forms downloaded, printed on scratchy paper. Eleanor filled them out at home that night, pen trembling as she detailed the factory hazards, the public firing. They can't get away with this, she muttered, sealing the envelope with a lick that tasted of defiance. The courthouse loomed downtown, a gray monolith under overcast skies. Eleanor clutched her folder, stepping into the clerk's office with shoulders squared. The young woman behind the counter scanned her papers, eyebrows arching. "No lawyer?" she asked, almost pitying. "Can't afford one," Eleanor replied, chin lifting. "But it's the truth." The clerk stamped the forms. "Court date in 6 weeks. Good luck." Back home, the wait began. Eleanor scoured classifieds, pounding pavement for odd jobs, cleaning houses, walking dogs. Her pickup sputtered on fumes. Gas money scraped from couch cushions. Nights grew longer, sleep elusive. She lay in bed, staring at water stains on the ceiling. What if they win? The fear coiled in her gut like a spring. Harlan's lawyers would bury her in jargon, twist her words. Weeks ticked by. The first hearing arrived, rain sluicing down as Eleanor parked outside the courthouse. She smoothed her best blouse, faded but ironed, and walked in, heart hammering. The courtroom was sterile, wooden benches creaking under sparse attendees. Victor's team arrived in suits sharp as knives, briefcases bulging. Eleanor stood alone at the plaintiff's table, voice steady as she presented her case. Photos of the faulty machine, Jim's medical report she'd begged for, her own termination notice. The judge, an older man with wire-rimmed glasses, listened impassively. Harlan's lawyer rose, smirking. "Your Honor, Ms. Thompson was terminated for insubordination, not safety concerns. No evidence links her firing to complaints." Papers shuffled, emails produced. Doctored, Eleanor knew. But how to prove it? Her cross-examination felt like a gut punch. "Isn't it true you disrupted the line?" the lawyer pressed, leaning in. "I spoke up for safety," she shot back, face flushing. The gavel fell. Case dismissed for lack of substantial evidence. Plaintiff may refile with counsel. Eleanor's world tilted. She stumbled out into the rain, papers soaked, tears mixing with droplets on her cheeks. They rigged it, she thought, fury boiling. Back home, the power was out. Bill unpaid. She lit a candle, its flame flickering like her hope. Eviction came swift. Movers hauled her boxes to storage, the house echoing empty as she locked the door one last time. The shelter downtown was a last resort. Cots in rows, murmurs of the downtrodden filling the air. Eleanor claimed a bed in the corner, curling under a thin blanket. The smells, unwashed bodies, institutional food, clung to her. This can't be me, she thought, staring at the ceiling tiles. Meals were sparse, lines long. She volunteered in the kitchen to feel useful, chopping vegetables with swollen hands. Nights were the worst. Whispers from nearby beds, stories of loss, addiction, bad luck. Eleanor clutched her locket, a cheap trinket with her son's baby photo inside. "Wherever you are, I hope you're safe," she prayed silently. Despair clawed at her, but a stubborn spark remained. "I'll fight back. Somehow." Far away in New York, Alex Harlan sipped black coffee at his cluttered desk in a high-rise law firm. The city buzzed below, a cacophony of horns and ambition. At 35, Alex was sharp-suited, dark hair tousled from late nights, eyes intense behind frameless glasses. His specialty? Environmental suits against polluters. But labor cases tugged at him too, echoes of his adopted upbringing in a modest home. Scrolling through news feeds during a break, an article popped up. Ohio factory worker fired after safety complaint. Lawsuit dismissed. He clicked, reading about Eleanor Thompson, 58, assembly line veteran at Harlan Automotive. The name Harlan jolted him, his own surname, adopted from foster parents. Coincidence, he thought, but scrolled deeper. Photos showed the Cleveland plant, workers protesting faintly in the background. Eleanor's story unfolded, decades of service, public humiliation, now homeless. Alex leaned back, rubbing his chin. "This reeks of corporate bullying," he murmured. The details gnawed, unsafe machines, intimidated witnesses. He bookmarked the article, pulling up court records online. The dismissal seemed rushed, evidence thin. She's got a case, but no firepower. Empathy stirred, his own roots in foster care, the search for biological parents he'd abandoned years ago. What if that's me one day, fighting alone? He emailed a colleague. Thoughts on pro bono for an Ohio labor dispute? Response. Long shot. But if it exposes Harlan, it could be big. Alex stared at the screen, Eleanor's grainy photo gazing back. She looked familiar somehow. Weary eyes, resilient set to her jaw. Hang in there, he thought, unaware of the blood type pulling him closer. For now, He observed from afar, wheels turning in his mind. A quick search for union contacts in Cleveland. Might reach out anonymously, he decided, closing his laptop as the city lights twinkled on. Back in the shelter, Eleanor rose at dawn, queuing for breakfast. Porridge slopped into her bowl, steam rising. She ate mechanically, planning her next move. Appeal the dismissal. Find free legal aid. Can't give up, she told herself, pocketing a stale roll for later. Outside, Cleveland's streets bustled, indifferent to her plight. She walked to the library again, determination in her step despite the limp. Alex, meanwhile, boarded a subway, article open on his phone. Eleanor Thompson, he repeated silently. The name lingered, a puzzle piece he didn't know fit yet. Observation turned to quiet resolve. He'd dig deeper. Calls to Ohio contacts planned for tomorrow. Unseen threads connected them, tightening with each passing hour. Victor's office thrummed with the low hum of his desktop fan, a futile barrier against the rising heat of his temper. He slammed the phone receiver down, the clatter echoing off the glass walls. "Idiots!" he snarled under his breath, his face flushing red beneath the silver stubble. The call from the plant manager in Cleveland had been a litany of excuses. Whispers of unrest, workers murmuring about Eleanor's firing, a few even threatening to walk out. Victor leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, eyes narrowing at the cityscape beyond the window. They think they can challenge me? The thought fueled a smug curl to his lips. No. He'd built this empire by crushing dissent, and some Rust Belt relics wouldn't change that. He punched the intercom button with a jab. "Get legal here! Now!" Minutes later, his head counsel, a slick man named Ellis with wire-rimmed glasses and a perpetual smirk, entered carrying a tablet. "Sir?" Victor spun his chair to face him. "That Thompson woman. Her lawsuit's dead, but the noise isn't. Witnesses are talking. Shut them down." His voice was low, laced with steel. Ellis nodded, tapping notes. "Bonuses for loyalty, or warnings?" "Both." Victor stood, pacing to the window, hands clasped behind his back. He gazed down at the ant-like figures scurrying on the streets below. Offer retention incentives to the quiet ones. For the talkers, remind them jobs are scarce in Ohio. Family dependencies, mortgages, use it all. A chuckle escaped him, dark and self-satisfied. "They'll fold. They always do." Ellis hesitated, adjusting his tie. "And if they go public?" Victor's eyes flashed. "Bury it. NDAs, countersuits for defamation. Make examples." He turned, his expression hardening into arrogance, a king surveying his domain. "These people are cogs, Ellis. Replaceable. I decide who turns." As Ellis left, Victor poured himself a scotch, the amber liquid swirling in the glass like captured sunlight. He sipped, savoring the burn. "Progress," he muttered, echoing his boardroom mantra. But beneath the bravado, a flicker of unease stirred. Eleanor's name again, tugging like a loose thread. He shoved it down. Weakness. He grabbed his phone, dialing the PR firm. "Prep a statement. Time to go on offense." The press conference unfolded in the gleaming atrium of Harlan Tower, cameras flashing like lightning. Victor stepped to the podium, suit impeccable, smile polished to a sheen. Microphones clustered before him, reporters leaning in hungrily. He cleared his throat, voice booming through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, Harlan Automotive stands at the forefront of American innovation." He paused for effect, eyes scanning the crowd with feigned warmth. "Recent claims about our operations are unfortunate distortions by a few disgruntled individuals. Safety is our top priority. We invest millions in it annually." A reporter shot up a hand. "What about the Cleveland firing? Eleanor Thompson says it was retaliation for safety complaints." Victor's laugh was short, dismissive, his face twisting into a mask of condescension. Ms. Thompson was let go for performance issues, not heroism. In this economy, we can't carry underperformers. It's business. Tough decisions for the greater good. He leaned forward, voice dripping with arrogance. We're modernizing, shifting production to efficient facilities abroad. That creates value for shareholders, jobs where they're needed. If some can't adapt, that's on them. Murmurs rippled through the room, but Victor powered on. Harlan Automotive isn't just surviving. We're thriving. Questions? Hands flew up. Critics say you're gutting American towns. Victor smirked, adjusting his cufflinks. Critics? Armchair experts who've never run a company. I've built this from nothing. Thousands employed because of my vision. His chest puffed slightly, ego inflating with each word. We value our workers, but entitlement won't cut it. Adapt or step aside. The conference ended with applause from planted supporters, but Victor felt the thrill of dominance. Back in his office, he watched the clips go viral, headlines praising his bold leadership. That's how you handle pests, he thought, pouring another drink. But the unease lingered, Eleanor's name in the comments like a ghost. He scrolled, deleting a mental note of it. Irrelevant. Down in Cleveland, the escalation hit hard. At the factory, supervisors called one-on-one meetings. Jim, arm bandaged, sat in the break room, sweat beading despite the chill. The manager slid an envelope across the table. Bonus for your discretion. Sign here. No talking about the incident. Jim's eyes widened, then dropped. Family needs it, he thought, pen scratching the NDA. Maria faced a different tack. Heard you're vocal about safety, the supervisor said, leaning close. Think about your pension. One more complaint, and poof. Her face paled, lips pressing thin. Understood, she whispered, defiance crumbling under fear. Whispers spread. Anonymous calls at night. Watch your words, voices growled. Cars followed workers home, headlights glaring. The union rep backed off after a friendly visit from corporate suits. They're playing dirty, one worker muttered in the locker room, but voices hushed as a supervisor passed. Victor monitored from Detroit, reports flooding his inbox. Complaints down 80%, one read. He leaned back, feet on the desk, a triumphant grin spreading. See? Control. Arrogance swelled. Board members clapped him on the back at dinner that night. You're untouchable, Vic, one said over cigars. Victor laughed, clinking glasses. Damn right. This is my game. But in quiet moments, as he drove home through rain-slicked streets, doubt crept in. Why does her name stick? He gripped the wheel tighter, accelerating. No. Focus on the win. A new email pinged. Media requests for follow-ups. Spin it positive, he instructed PR. Make me the hero saving the company. The next day, Victor hosted an investor call, voice oozing confidence. Despite minor hiccups, we're on track for record profits. Questions about labor? Handled. Moving forward. His laugh echoed in the empty boardroom post-call. They eat it up. Escalation peaked with a leaked memo. Prioritize loyalty. Dissenters out. Workers in Cleveland read it online, fearful of thickening the air. Victor, reviewing it, nodded approval. Perfect. Arrogance blinded him to the brewing storm, online forums buzzing, a New York lawyer taking notes. They'll learn, he thought, swirling his scotch. Or they'll break. Nights found him in his penthouse, city lights mocking from below. He stared at his reflection in the window, face hardened by years of ruthlessness. This is power, he affirmed, but the glass felt cold. Arrogance armored him, yet cracks formed unseen. For now, he reveled, empire seemingly secure. The game continued, his moves sharper, more arrogant than ever. The shelter's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like a swarm of angry insects, casting harsh shadows on the rows of cots. Eleanor huddled under her thin blanket, the fabric scratching her skin like sandpaper. The air reeked of disinfectant and despair, mingled with the soft snores and muffled sobs from neighboring beds. Her body ached deeper now, the arthritis twisting her joints into knots without the distraction of daily labor. Just one more night, she whispered to herself, eyes fixed on the cracked ceiling tile above. But the nights stretched endless, each one heavier than the last. Morning brought no relief. She lined up for breakfast, tray in hand, as volunteers slopped oatmeal into bowls. The portion was meager, lumpy, and cold by the time she sat at a communal table. A woman across from her, face etched with lines like Eleanor's, muttered about lost jobs and broken promises. Eleanor nodded absently, spoon stirring circles in the gray mush. Her stomach growled, but appetite fled days ago. Can't keep this up, she thought, forcing a bite. The eviction had stripped her home. Now, the shelter stripped her dignity. Outside, Cleveland's streets pulsed with indifferent life. Eleanor trudged to the library, her boots heavy on the cracked sidewalk. Wind whipped through her threadbare coat, chilling her to the bone. She passed a billboard touting Harlan Automotive's innovation. Victor's face beaming down, smug and untouchable. Rage bubbled up, hot and sudden. "You did this," she glared at the image, fists clenching in her pockets. But the billboard stared back, unmoved. At the computer terminal, she refreshed her email. No responses to job applications. Warehouse gigs demanded youth she didn't have. Retail wanted smiles she couldn't muster. Too old, too broken. The rejection screamed in silence. She pulled up legal aid sites, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The dismissed lawsuit haunted her. Appeal forms downloaded, but doubt gnawed. What's the point? They'll crush me again. Her reflection on the screen looked gaunt, eyes hollowed by sleepless nights. Afternoons blurred into job hunts. She knocked on doors at temp agencies, resumes clutched like a lifeline. "Experience in assembly," she said to a bored receptionist, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The woman scanned the paper, lips pursing. "We'll call if something fits." No call came. Eleanor's steps slowed on the way back, the city closing in. Tall buildings mocking her smallness, cars honking past without a glance. Stress clawed at her health. One evening, pain shot through her chest, sharp as a knife. She doubled over on her cot, breath ragged, sweat beading on her forehead. "Not now," she gasped, clutching her side. A shelter volunteer noticed, eyes widening. "You okay?" Eleanor waved her off, but the ambulance came anyway. At the ER, under glaring lights, doctors poked and prodded. "High blood pressure, exacerbated by arthritis and stress," the physician said, scribbling notes. "No insurance? We'll bill you." The bill arrived days later. Went out on $200. Eleanor stared at it in the shelter's common room, the paper trembling in her grip. How, she thought, vision blurring with tears. Savings gone, home lost. Now this. She folded it away, but the weight pressed on her chest like a stone. Nights grew darker. Whispers from other residents fueled paranoia. Stories of corporate spies, blacklists for complainers. "Heard Harlan's got eyes everywhere," one man said over dinner. Eleanor's fork paused midair. Can't be, but doubt seated. Anonymous calls started, her old number forwarded to a prepaid cell. "Drop it, or else," a gravelly voice hissed one night. She hung up, heart racing, phone clutched white-knuckled. "They're watching," she thought, glancing over her shoulder in the dim hall. Isolation deepened. Old co-workers avoided her calls. Maria's voicemail full, Jim's number disconnected. Traitors, she muttered, but understood. The fear was contagious. Friends from church offered platitudes. God's plan. Eleanor forced smiles, but inside, bitterness brewed. What plan leaves me here? The shelter's rules grated. Curfews, shared showers, constant noise eroding her sanity. One rainy afternoon, she collapsed on a park bench near the library, soaked to the skin. Pigeons pecked at crumbs around her feet, indifferent. Tears mixed with rain on her cheeks. Rock bottom, she thought, hugging her knees. No family, no home, health failing. The locket around her neck felt heavy, her son's photo inside, a reminder of lost chances. If only I'd kept you. Regret twisted like the pain in her joints. Yet, a flicker of resolve remained. She stood, wiping her face, and headed back to the computer. Appeal the case, she typed furiously, forming printing with a whir. Fight, damn it! But exhaustion pulled at her, steps faltering. In New York, Alex paced his apartment, phone to ear. Union rep in Cleveland. Tell me more about Thompson. The voice on the line detailed the intimidation, the blacklisting. Alex's brow furrowed, notepad filled with scribbles. She's being buried alive, he murmured after hanging up. He pulled up factory photos online, Eleanor's story unfolding in articles. This isn't just unfair, it's systematic. His own adoption papers sat in a drawer nearby, unopened for years. Coincidence? But the pull strengthened. He emailed contacts. Gathering evidence, witnesses? Replies trickled in, anonymously, fearful. Alex leaned back, staring at the ceiling. She's cornered. Time to step in. He booked a flight to Ohio to resolve hardening. Pro bono. For her. Back in the shelter, Eleanor queued for dinner, tray shaking. A cough racked her body, cold settling in from the damp. Can't get sick now, she thought. But the fever brewed. She ate alone, staring at the wall. Tension coiled tighter, the world narrowing to survival. 1 foot forward, she repeated. But the path ahead darkened, a tunnel with no light. Whispers in the night, plans for tomorrow's job hunt. But sleep evaded, mind racing with what-ifs. Drowned, she felt, waves of despair crashing. Yet, unknown to her, help circled. Alex's plane ticket printed, evidence compiling. For now, she clung to the edge, nails digging in, refusing to let go. The storm raged, pushing her to the brink. The Cleveland courthouse stood like a stern sentinel under a slate-gray sky, its stone facade etched with decades of judgments. Inside courtroom 5, the air hung thick with anticipation, wooden benches creaking under the weight of spectators, reporters scribbling notes, former co-workers shifting uneasily, and a smattering of union reps watching with folded arms. Eleanor sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, knuckles white against the scarred wood. She wore her Sunday best, a simple navy dress, pressed but frayed at the hems, her face pale, eyes darting to the empty seat beside her. Alone again, she thought, swallowing the lump in her throat. The previous hearing's dismissal echoed in her mind, a ghost mocking her resolve. The judge, a stern woman with silver-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun, banged her gavel. Case 4782, Thompson versus Harlan Automotive. Proceedings resume. Victor entered from the side door, flanked by his legal team, his stride confident, suit tailored to perfection. He took his seat at the defense table, not glancing at Eleanor, his expression a mask of bored indifference. This ends today, he thought, fingers tapping his briefcase. His PR spin had worked. Headlines now questioned her credibility, painting her as a bitter has-been. Eleanor's heart sank as the defense lawyer rose first, voice smooth as oil. Your Honor, We moved to dismiss once more. No new evidence. Whispers rippled through the room. Eleanor leaned forward, ready to speak, but her voice caught. "I have proof," she started, holding up a folder of photos and reports, her hand trembling. The doors at the back swung open with a soft whoosh. Heads turned as Alex Harlan strode in, briefcase in hand, his New York polish standing out amid the Midwestern grit. Tall, with sharp features softened by a determined jaw, he adjusted his tie mid-step. "Your Honor," he called, voice cutting through the murmur like a blade. "Alex Harlan, Esquire, representing the plaintiff pro bono." Gasps echoed. Harlan? The name hung in the air. Victor froze, his eyes narrowing at the young man. Coincidence, he dismissed internally, but a twinge pulled at his gut. Eleanor blinked, confused, knitting her brows. "Who?" she whispered, watching as Alex approached the bench, handing over credentials with a nod. The judge peered over her glasses. "Proceed, counselor. But make it quick." Alex took his place beside Eleanor, giving her a reassuring smile. "I've reviewed your filings," he said softly, his tone warm yet firm. "We're turning this around." Eleanor's eyes widened, a spark of hope flickering amid the exhaustion. Why help me, she thought, but gratitude overrode doubt. Alex unpacked his briefcase, spreading documents like a general laying out battle plans. He stood, addressing the court. "Your Honor, new evidence shows systemic negligence at Harlan Automotive. Witness statements, suppressed safety audits, emails proving retaliation." He projected slides on the wall screen, grainy photos of faulty machines, redacted reports, now unredacted through his digs. The room hushed, reporters leaning forward. Victor shifted, his smirk fading into a scowl. "Where'd he get that?" he seethed inwardly, signaling his lawyer to object. "Objection! Chain of custody!" the defense barked. "Overruled," the judge snapped. "Continue." Alex paced deliberately, building momentum. He called witnesses, reluctant factory hands who'd cracked under his anonymous outreach. Jim took the stand, arms still scarred, voice halting. "The machines were death traps. Eleanor spoke for us all." Alex nodded, drawing out details, ignored complaints, threats from above. Eleanor's chest tightened with each word, tears pricking her eyes. "Someone believes me," she realized, gripping the table edge. Victor watched, arrogance cracking into irritation. "This kid's a showboat," he thought, leaning to whisper to his counsel. But Alex's evidence mounted. Financial records showing cost cuts over safety. Emails from Victor himself ordering quiet handling. The climax built as Alex turned to Victor. Defense calls Victor Harlan to the stand. Victor rose slowly, straightening his jacket, a predatory smile masking the unease. He swore in, voice booming. "Ask away, son." Alex met his gaze evenly. "Mr. Harlan, you claim Eleanor's firing was for performance, but emails show orders to terminate troublemakers. Care to explain?" Victor's laugh was forced, echoing hollowly. "Business decisions? She's replaceable. Like all of them." He gestured dismissively at Eleanor, his eyes cold. "Entitled workers drag us down." Eleanor's face burned, humiliation twisting her gut. "Monster," she thought, nails digging into her palms. The courtroom murmured, tension coiling like a spring. Alex paused, letting the words hang. Then his voice dropped, steady and piercing. "Replaceable? Like you replaced her 35 years ago?" Gasps rippled. Victor's smirk faltered, confusion creasing his brow. "What nonsense?" Alex produced a folder, holding up documents. Yellowed adoption papers. A recent DNA report. "You abandoned Eleanor Thompson when she was pregnant. Left her to struggle alone in Ohio while you built your empire." He turned to the judge. "I have the records. Paternity confirmed. Victor's face drained of color, hands gripping the stand's edge. Lies, he croaked, but his voice wavered. The room erupted in whispers. Alex stepped closer, his own hands steady despite the storm inside. That child you never claimed. He's standing before you. He locked eyes with Victor. I'm your son. The courtroom exploded. Gasps, flashes from cameras, the judge banging her gavel for order. Victor staggered back, as if slapped, his world tilting. Impossible, he thought, mind reeling through foggy memories. The brief affair, the hasty exit, the agency payments to bury it. His empire, his control, shattering in an instant. Eleanor rose halfway from her seat, hand to her mouth, eyes wide with shock. My boy, she breathed, tears spilling. Recognition dawned, the familiar jawline, the eyes she'd dreamed of. Joy and pain crashed together, her heart pounding. Alex turned to her, voice soft amid the chaos. Mom. The word hung, raw and real. Victor slumped, face ashen, arrogance stripped bare. I didn't know, he stammered, but the lie tasted bitter. The truth hung exposed, a bomb detonated in the heart of his kingdom. The judge called recess, gavel echoing like thunder. Spectators buzzed, but Eleanor and Alex stood frozen, worlds colliding. Victor stared at them, a broken king facing his reckoning. The air crackled, the revelation's shockwaves rippling out, forever altering the room's fragile balance. The courtroom fell into a stunned hush, the revelation hanging in the air like smoke after a gunshot. Victor Harlan gripped the witness stand, his fingers digging into the wood until his nails bit into the varnish. His face, once a fortress of arrogance, crumbled, eyes wide, mouth agape, color draining to a ghostly pallor. No, he whispered, the word escaping like a deflated hiss. His mind reeled, flashing through buried memories. The hurried goodbye to Eleanor, the check to the adoption agency, the deliberate forgetting. This can't be real, he thought. But the DNA papers Alex held fluttered in the AC breeze, irrefutable proof, waving like a white flag of surrender. The judge's gavel cracked like thunder, demanding order amid the erupting whispers. Recess! 15 minutes! She barked, her own eyes flickering with surprise. Reporters scrambled, phones out, flashes popping as Victor staggered off the stand, his legal team swarming him like panicked bees. Ellis grabbed his arm, face ashen. We need to regroup, deny, countersue for fabrication. But Victor shoved him away, collapsing into a chair in the hallway, head in hands. Sweat beaded on his forehead, soaking his collar. My son, he muttered, the word foreign on his tongue. Shame twisted in his gut, hot and unfamiliar. Decades of boardroom victories, and now this, a public gutting by his own blood. Chaos spilled outside. Media vans clogged the street, microphones thrusting forward as Victor's team hustled him to a side exit. No comment, Ellis shouted, but the damage burned viral. Phones buzzed with alerts. Harlan CEO's secret son exposed in court bombshell. Victor slumped in the back of his black SUV, the door slamming shut like a coffin lid. He stared at his reflection in the tinted window, old, broken. I built everything, he thought, fists clenching. But the empire felt hollow now, foundations cracking under the weight of truth. Board calls flooded in as the car sped toward the airport. Victor? What the hell? The chairman's voice crackled over the speakerphone. Stocks tanking. 5% already. Investors are fleeing. Victor's throat tightened, words failing. Handle it, he croaked, but his voice lacked command. By evening, the board convened an emergency, without him. Emails pinged. Immediate resignation demanded. The scandal is too deep. He paced his hotel suite in Cleveland, scotch splashing over the rim of his glass. They can't do this, he raged inwardly. But the mirror showed a defeated man, shoulders slumped. Federal probes launched overnight. OSHA for safety violations, SEC for misleading shareholders on labor costs, warrants for records, subpoenas for executives. Victor's phone rang non-stop. Lawyers advising silence, PR spinning damage control. Paternity suit angle, deny knowledge, one suggested. But Victor hung up, sinking into an armchair, the city's lights mocking from below. I abandoned them. The admission clawed at him, raw and unrelenting. Sleep evaded. Nightmares of empty factories and accusing eyes haunting the dark. Meanwhile, in the courthouse lobby, Eleanor sat on a bench, her world spinning. Alex knelt before her, hand on her knee, his eyes, her eyes, searching hers. "It's me, Mom. I found you." Tears streamed down her face, a dam breaking after decades. She reached out, trembling fingers tracing his cheek. "My boy," she breathed, voice cracking with joy and sorrow. The pain of loss, the years of wondering, washed away in that touch. "You're here," she thought, heart swelling despite the ache. The judge reconvened, the courtroom packed tighter now, air electric. "In light of new evidence," she declared, voice cutting sharp. "Motion to dismiss denied. Judgment for the plaintiff. Wrongful termination confirmed." Cheers erupted from the gallery, union reps clapping, co-workers who'd snuck in pumping fists. "Back pay. 150 on. Damages for pain and suffering. $500,000. Company reforms mandated. Independent safety audits. Whistleblower protections." Eleanor's breath caught, tears flowing freely. Vindicated, she realized, the word tasting sweet after bitterness. Reporters mobbed her outside, microphones thrusting. "How do you feel, Miss Thompson?" one asked. She straightened, voice steady for the first time in months. "Justice. Finally." Alex stood beside her, arms supportive around her shoulders. "This isn't just for her," he added, facing cameras. "It's for every worker silenced." Flashes popped, headlines forming. "Forgotten son wins for fired mom. Harlan empire cracks." Eleanor collapsed into a cab with Alex, the city blurring past. "You're home." "Our home," he said softly, handing her a key to his New York spare room. "Temporary, until we sort yours." She nodded, exhaustion mingling with relief. At the shelter, she gathered her few belongings, volunteers hugging her goodbye. "You did it," one whispered. Eleanor smiled faintly, the weight lifting. "We did." That night, in a modest hotel room Alex booked, Eleanor soaked in a hot bath, steam easing her joints. Free, she thought, tears mixing with the water. No more shelters, no more fear. The settlement check would come, debts paid, house reclaimed, health care secured. She emerged wrapped in a robe, finding Alex on the couch, scrolling news. "Stock plunge. Victor's out," he said, voice neutral. Eleanor sat beside him, hand on his. "My son." The word warmed her, healing old wounds. Victor's fall accelerated. Paparazzi camped outside his Detroit penthouse, bored ousting him by dawn. Effective immediately, the press release read. He packed a bag, face haggard, avoiding mirrors. Ruined, he thought, boarding a private jet to nowhere. Lawsuits piled, class actions from workers, paternity claims formalized. His name, once synonymous with success, now tainted. Eleanor slept soundly that night, dreams gentle for the first time. Alex watched over her, his own heart mending. The immediate aftermath sealed, villain toppled, victim risen. Justice, swift and sharp, reshaped their worlds in hours. The sun dipped low over Lake Erie, painting the Cleveland skyline in hues of orange and pink, a gentle farewell to the day's chaos. Eleanor stood on the small porch of her reclaimed home, the key turning smoothly in the lock for the first time in months. The door creaked open, revealing the familiar clutter, dusty furniture, stacked boxes from storage. But it felt like a sanctuary. She stepped inside, the floorboards sighing under her weight, and set down her bag. Home, she breathed, a soft smile breaking through the weariness etched on her face. The settlement money had flowed in swiftly, debts erased, medical bills paid, even a modest cushion for the future. No more shelters, no more fear gnawing at her edges. Alex followed her in, carrying a box of groceries, fresh bread, fruits, things she'd denied herself for too long. He placed it on the kitchen counter, his movements careful, eyes scanning the space. "Needs a fresh coat of paint," he said lightly, but his voice carried the weight of unspoken years. Eleanor turned to him, her son, tall, composed, yet vulnerable in this moment. She reached out, cupping his face gently. "You've given me more than walls," she whispered, tears glistening. "A second chance." Inside, warmth spread through her chest, mending fractures she'd long ignored. Family, she thought, the word a balm after solitude's sting. Victor, meanwhile, wandered the empty halls of his Detroit penthouse, the echo of his footsteps mocking the silence. Boxes lined the walls, artwork packed, suits folded away, as movers prepared for his downsizing. The board's ousting stung like a fresh wound, headlines still blaring, "Disgraced CEOs fall from grace." He paused at the floor-to-ceiling window, staring at the twinkling city below. "All for what?" he murmured, hand pressing against the cool glass. Regret coiled in his gut, sharp and unrelenting. The empire he'd built, once a throne, now felt like chains. Sleepless nights had forced reflection, the abandoned child, the crushed workers, the hollow victories. "Power blinded me," he admitted inwardly, the arrogance stripped raw. He picked up his phone, hesitating over Alex's number, obtained through lawyers. Fingers hovered, then dialed. "Hello." Alex's voice came through, cautious. "It's me," Victor said, voice rough, stripped of command. "I need to talk." A pause stretched, heavy with unspoken pain. They met the next day in a neutral Cleveland cafe, steam rising from coffee cups like tentative bridges. Victor sat across from them, shoulders hunched, eyes downcast. "I was wrong," he started, words tumbling out haltingly. "About everything. The factory, the safety, you." He looked at Eleanor, regretting carving deep lines on his face. "I left you to suffer. And Alex, my son." The word caught in his throat, foreign yet fitting. Eleanor's gaze softened, but steel lingered beneath. "You can't erase the years," she said quietly, hand on Alex's arm. "But you can change now." Victor nodded, tears welling unbidden. "I'm stepping away fully. The company's reforming. New leadership, fair wages, safety overhauls. My doing." He slid a folder across. Documents pledging his personal funds to a worker relief fund. "It's a start." Alex leaned forward, eyes searching his father's. "Why now?" Victor met his gaze, vulnerability cracking through. "Because I see it. Responsibility isn't just leading, it's lifting others. I chased success, but lost humanity." The admission hung, a quiet epiphany in the bustling cafe. "Kindness isn't weakness," he added softly, echoing lessons learned too late. "It's the real strength." Eleanor sipped her coffee, the warmth seeping into her bones. "We've all paid prices," she said, voice steady. "But forgiveness, that's our choice." She extended a hand across the table, tentative. Victor took it, grip firm yet trembling. A fragile truce formed, not erasing scars, but salving them. Weeks blended into healing. Eleanor volunteered at the shelter, sharing her story over warm meals. "Stand up," she told wide-eyed residents, her presence a beacon. Truth wins. Laughter returned to her home. Dinners with Alex, stories exchanged under the porch light. I missed this, she thought, watching him chop vegetables, his laugh echoing hers. Victor retreated to a modest lakeside cabin in Michigan, far from boardrooms. He wrote letters, anonymously funding scholarships for Rust Belt kids, advocating in quiet op-eds for labor rights. Redemption, he pondered during solitary walks, waves lapping at his feet. One step at a time. Regret lingered, but purpose bloomed, foundations for a legacy rebuilt on empathy. Alex bridged worlds, his New York firm taking pro bono cases inspired by Eleanor's fight. "Dad's changing," he told Eleanor over phone calls, voice laced with cautious hope. Family dinners became ritual, awkward at first, then genuine laughter easing old tensions. One crisp autumn evening, the three walked along Lake Erie's shore, wind tousling their hair. Eleanor linked arms with Alex, Victor trailing slightly behind. "Life's about seeing the unseen," she said softly, gazing at the horizon. "The workers, the lost ones. We all deserve a voice." Victor nodded, the lesson etched deep. "And listening," he added, voice humble, "before it's too late." Alex smiled, squeezing her hand. "We've got time now." The sun set, casting golden light over the water, a promise of tomorrows. Eleanor felt peace settle, the journey's end not in victory alone, but in connection. Home isn't a place, she realized, heart full. It's people. As waves whispered against the shore, the family stood united, shadows lengthening but no longer dark. Lessons learned, wounds healing. The story closed on redemption's quiet note, a testament to resilience, responsibility, and the enduring power of truth. In the end, the Forgotten Son's reckoning reminds us that true power lies not in wealth or status, but in empathy, accountability, and the courage to confront our past mistakes, proving that family and fairness can heal even the deepest divides. What do you think? Has a hidden truth ever changed your life? Or do you have a story of standing up against injustice? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching and joining this emotional journey. If you enjoyed it, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more inspiring stories. See you in the next one.